Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with the life and times of Savior 28. Dennis McNulty continues to recount his mentor's ups and downs, from his nervous breakdown at the end of World War II to his plea in 2001 to fellow heroes to find a better way than costumed fisticuffs. It seems James Smith's death was sanctioned by the vice president at the time, but why specifically remains unknown. Issue 3's cover features our hero in front of his campaign banner, throwing the peace sign for a group photo with several world leaders. Not all of them well regarded. You got Tony Blair, the Dalai Lama, but also Gaddafi, Castro, I think. Yeah, this chapter's title, The World is Watching Indeed. It's 6 months since 28's death, and 6 months of Dennis compiling his memoir, confession.
The nuns at St. Teresa's would love that, wouldn't they? Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Thing is, I don't know that I have sinned.
You shot a guy who was calling for peace and to stop violence, all because Dick Cheney told you to. Yeah, you sinned.
You sinful beast!
Old Denny isn't certain because he did it for God and country, it was the right thing, and he'd do it again if given the chance. Hey, does that help his case at all? Yeah, I didn't think so, just thought I'd confirm. Yet none of that has made the guilt any easier to deal with. He's had trouble sleeping, so has spent time going over files, writing up drafts of his chronicles, and watching VHS tapes about Project 28. The ill-conceived collaboration with Project One Way did not help Savior 28's image. While sincere in his calls for peace, James did have an ego and loved the spotlight. At a rally he held in Central Park in April of '02, he told a crowd of 12,000 people about the epiphany he had, that after his decades of punching the bad guys and dropping buildings on their heads, something had to change in himself and the world. We need to make buildings sturdier so they can be reused after crushing supercriminals. He even mentioned Samantha, so maybe he admitted his relationship after her death, or maybe the relationship was publicly known but not his identity. Whatever the case, he cites that quote he discovered in his drunken misery. While attributed to the Buddha, it was something she'd told him numerous times, and it felt like her spirit had guided him to that randomly opened page. That was the moment he knew he would never again use violence to solve problems. Certainly didn't help me with my homework as a kid. Apparently it's not traditional arithmetic to answer what's 42 minus 25 by punching your paper 17 times. As a warrior, he knows that peace is the way, words which he leads the crowd in chanting, the highlight of Jim's superhero career that lasted all of 20 minutes.
But I'm getting ahead of myself.
Well, it's a non-linear story, so you're ahead, behind, and on target all at once.
It's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Months before this rally, while trying to clarify his new life journey, he went to the next best sounding board to Samantha, her daughter Julia Garson, who ran a charity center called For the People. He surprised her, they got talking over tea and cookies, Julia making nice despite not being overly thrilled to see him. Also, apparently they had an affair way back when. Yep, nothing says I love Samantha by sleeping with her then 20-something daughter.
I had sex!
Anyway, he explains wanting to use his powers for the good of mankind, though not sure how just yet. Sam would say he doesn't need a costume to make a difference, just being kind. But Jim admits to kind of being addicted to grand displays and melodrama, getting frustrated as he says he can't change the world by handing out soup or used clothes. His dropping of 2 F-bombs tells Julia he has changed, and I guess reignites something of a spark between them because things start getting a bit frisky. Julia, though, changes her mind, feeling like this makes her mom's stand-in, and James, not sure how true that may be, still trusts her advice as much as he did Samantha's. But, as Jules points out, he never took that counsel to heart, just doing whatever he wanted, which he's likely to keep doing. In a kind of 180 in tone, slightly jarring if you ask me, Jimmy hands her a gift he had forgotten about until just now, the loving heart needlepoint that belonged to her mom. And the following exchange brings up some painful memories, how difficult Sam and Julia could be together, which is why she didn't really visit her in the nursing home or go to her funeral, and how her dad ended his own life when she was still a baby. Julia gets so worked up she uses very unkind language about her deceased mom, which James instinctively scolds her for, so she tells him he'd better go. That which is needed most here is a loving heart, not busy hands. Dennis narrates that while Jim tended to do the opposite of what Samantha suggested, he did listen because he needed her input to make his own decisions, and Julia had the same effect. After some TV interviews and his first peace rally, he got a letter from Jules, saying that with all this press, he should see the world outside his colorfully costumed universe, how people in the world outside the USA live. He took this fantastic advice, which was meant to say that he should go incognito, and turned it into a very public world peace tour. He knew politicians enjoyed media attention more than he did, so easily got meetings with numerous world leaders of varying repute, like the aforementioned Saddam Hussein. This ticked off the Bush administration, since 28 hadn't bothered with State Department approval, and Vice President Cheney accused him of cavorting with the enemy, giving them legitimacy they don't deserve, and flirting with treason. And hoo boy, the places I could go with a statement like that, but moving on. Polls suggested that half the American public trusted Savior 28, even if they didn't fully get what he was doing. Well, Dennis figured that it was Jimmy looking for legitimacy, while still playing a role even when seeing the suffering in places like Calcutta. He'd been fed a lot of propaganda about himself, and that's not easy to simply discard. When the Dalai Lama told him there needed to be first inner disarmament before outer disarmament, Jimmy just smiled and nodded, not really knowing what he meant. Did the Dalai Lama just threaten me? I think he said he was going to rip my spleen out. Is this about breaking his glasses while I was trying them on for fun? He's supposed to be about detachment from material things. What the heck? When he returned to the States, 28 arranged a meeting with the president to discuss his new mission, a chat with no cameras and held in the middle of the night, which we don't see, but clearly did not go well. Nevertheless, he figured he could eventually change W's mind. I'll prove to him that Animaniacs is a better show than Tiny Toon Adventures. One of his rallies after this was interrupted by Miss Jupiter, a former history professor who believed herself to be the reincarnation of the king of the Roman gods, Jupiter. The crowd scatters at her electric arrival, as she explains escaping from custody and killing a bunch of guards, and targeting Savior 28 like she has for the past 9 years. The hero says their brawls, her attempt to prove her godhood, have been a waste of power and potential for both of them, suggesting she be more constructive and strive for peace. She literally laughs at this, then hits him with some lightning, demanding he fight back. S-28 refuses, taking several more shots, though for all his strength and toughness, he could still be hurt. At this time, he would later explain, taking the abuse because he didn't know what else to do. I thought I could lighten the mood with a joke that her Sailor Jupiter cosplay wasn't accurate to the manga or anime, but that just made things worse. It was easy to say he disavowed violence, but to let her pummel him 6 ways from Sunday, which would allow her to turn on the innocents in the park, that's not something he could stand for, so he'd admit in an interview later he reverted to type, slamming both fists on top of Jupiter's skull.
Kabong!
Having another breakdown in public this time, not wanting to do the same thing he's been doing for 60 years, screaming that his enemies make him do this, he lifts a big old tree from the ground and slams it into the villainess. He was aghast by his actions, but was even more stunned by the crowd's reaction, cheering him for the very violence he had been admonishing, applauding and adoring the excessive force he would call pathetic in that interview, though lamenting that people had been conditioned since birth to see only heroes and villains. As James Smith, he later hit up a local bar, because alcoholism, and is surprised by Queen Shakti, whom he thought was dead. Don't you know by now that people like us never stay dead? Kinda makes you wonder why writers and editors keep killing us off. I mean, other than lack of creativity or vindictiveness, looking at you, Dandidio. He tells her to just end him already, and seems to mean it, but she's not there to fight, and knows he's always desired her, to which he gives a very crude response, then swiftly apologizes. Shakti understands that he's frustrated and depressed, so asks that he join her in her quest to bring peace to the world before it destroys itself. He tells her to buzz off when she talks about being meant to help him, so she pays for his drinks and leaves. Outside, she meets with a large, shadowy figure in a trench coat, with a very unique dialogue bubbles, saying 28 isn't ready yet, but will be, and they teleport away back to her base. Moments later, gas canisters are thrown into the bar, releasing a green mist that renders James unconscious as he's taken away by people in red armor. When he wakes up, he's in a red-lit room, restrained in an elaborate machine.
I thought insurance salesmen were pushy.
Surrounded by monitors, he's observed by two of his fellow heroes, and Dennis in one of those armored suits. This recollection making our narrator even more distraught as the issue ends.
It was the only way to get him to listen to my timeshare presentation. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, I tells ya.
We've gotten more on the complicated path Jimmy took to try and make the world better, and how difficult it was to stay true to his non-violent ways. Tune in next week to see if being kidnapped helps Jimmy's disposition. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.